He's the type of person, if he ran over a homeless person, would say, oh, it's good that there are less of them on the streets. The narcissistic sociopaths, the most dangerous, violent types of narcissist. You have narcissistic psychopaths, sociopaths, covert narcissists, grandiose narcissists. The narcissistic sociopaths, which are going to be the smaller portion, are, in my experience, one of the most dangerous type because they are more prone to violence. In fact, if you look at 70+% of the prisoners that are in jail for violent crimes, they are diagnosed with sociopathy. Not all sociopaths, of course, are narcissists, just like not all psychopaths are narcissists, but I'm specifically talking about when narcissism and sociopathy overlap. So you have all the same traits and characteristics you're going to find in narcissistic personality disorder, also with a predisposition to sociopathy, which is violent tendencies, looking at people as playthings, no boundaries at all whatsoever, callousness, no emotions when it comes to hurting and harming someone physically, as well as emotionally, etc. I've dealt with a couple of these, and some of the things that they have said to me, I can't even repeat. I can't repeat. They're people that you just have to get away from as quickly as possible. You are probably going to encounter at least one or two in your lifetime. Hopefully it won't be a friend, a family member, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. From what I've seen, signs to look out for. So they don't have any boundaries when it comes to sexually, morally, or ethically. So that's one of the key traits. They're the types of people, they don't care if, in some cases, not all, if it's a man or a woman, if it's a child or an adult, if it's that they don't have boundaries. And that's one of the scariest things about narcissistic sociopaths. Their morality is just not there. If they, for example, harm someone, I'm going to give you actually a few real life examples in just a moment. Harming someone doesn't matter at all to them. I'm going to also, during this tape, give you some signs and indicators that someone might be one. They oftentimes are confused for covert narcissists in some cases because they do have similar characteristics. One of the things that I noticed is a lot of times they will have a monotone voice. They will have a sociopathic stare. They have icy cold eyes. It's hard to describe, but eyes that are just devoid of any kind of emotion or love, like soulless eyes. One example, a famous example of a narcissistic sociopath was Jeffrey Dahmer. Also, Jim Jones, you could put in that category, and there are some other ones. Another trait that I've noticed they have is when they talk about people. Notice a narcissistic sociopath, when they talk about people, always talk about people in terms of their use. So by that meaning, they see it as people that come into their lives as if it's their job to serve them. So if they make a new friend with someone, it's, oh, he's going to help me get more job opportunities, or she has a lot of money, or he's going to help me. I'll be able to get this out of him. I'll be able to get that out of her. They always use people as means to an end. They don't look at people as people. It's always what that person can do for them. But what makes it a little bit different with a narcissistic sociopath is, to that person, they don't even seem to be human, or they don't even seem to be real. It's like they're like playthings to them. The level of coldness, the level of callousness. If that person can no longer serve that purpose, they have no emotion about cutting them off. They don't have that sense of connection with humanity. They don't have that sense of connection with other human beings. It's just, what can you do for me? You are an object. A little bit of a difference with regular traditional narcissism, even though, again, it's very similar. The traits do overlap in this case, but narcissists, yes, traditional narcissists who don't have the other characteristics, they do use people, but with a sociopath, there's a certain coldness about it that's just a little different. With a narcissistic sociopath, if that person no longer is able to give them a certain amount of money or opportunities, etc., it's like that person doesn't exist. They cut that person off in a way that is very cold. It's almost like, I don't want to get too graphic, but they immediately are discarded. There's no use for them anymore. Another characteristic I've noticed about narcissistic sociopaths is they usually do not like animals. It's kind of weird. If you ask them about pets, or have you had one, or do you want to get one, they don't seem to like pets that often. They may pretend to like a pet or something, but there's, again, a certain coldness. It's like, again, I don't want to be too graphic, but when we're talking about narcissistic sociopaths, an example is if you have a pet, they would have no emotions about cooking that pet. That's the energy they give off. That's the vibe they give off. They don't care. It's like they would cook your own pet for you and then be mad if you don't want to eat it and see you as being disrespectful for not wanting to eat it. And, oh, I don't see what the problem is. It's like they have a certain callousness about them, which is very unnerving. And yes, at times it can be a little scary. Another characteristic they have is they see human beings as two-dimensional characters with no substance, with no emotion, with no depth. They don't see human beings as fully three-dimensional, rounded individuals. They see people as pretty much literal objects. They're missing something. Another trait you'll see oftentimes with a narcissistic sociopath is they will contradict themselves quite frequently. They may be pathological or compulsive liars, and if you call them out directly in the middle of the lie, they will simply lie again, and even if it doesn't make sense, they'll just keep going with it. Another characteristic you'll see is a lot of narcissistic sociopaths tend to have criminal records or histories of violence, including domestic violence, but they don't consider it to be their fault. They consider it to be the fault of the person who made them do it or provoke them. So if they hit a woman, it's her fault. If they harmed somebody or assaulted somebody, they see it as it's his fault. If they pulled out a gun on an unarmed person, they see it as, well, that person knew I was going to do that, or they should have known, or basically they feel like that other person did that to them. They don't have any guilt or remorse. Huge characteristic of a narcissistic sociopath. No guilt or remorse. Narcissistic sociopaths are also terrified of appearing weak and will at times physically harm somebody for hurting their ego. So I'm going to give you a few real life examples, things I've heard. One of them told me, a narcissistic sociopath told me that if he had a child, he would unalive it because it would just be too stressful for him to have it and he wouldn't be able to deal with that. What he described was very graphic, and so I don't want to repeat that. That's one example. Example number 2 is I had a pet kitten that I was really excited about. Beautiful pet kitten. And it was a ragdoll kitten. I don't know if you've ever seen those before. Gorgeous, bright blue eyes. It was like, it could fit in the palm of my hand. And with this kitten, he talked about how it would be a good idea to, once it gets bigger, to unalive the kitten because it wouldn't be as cute anymore. Who thinks like that? Like, does that even follow logic? Does that even follow, what kind of human being, this is what I'm talking about. Now, with this narcissistic sociopath, he described himself as seeing blind. I asked him to describe that to me, and he talked about how he would go into blind rages where he would completely black out. He didn't know what he said, he didn't know what he did, and he didn't remember anything. And this is commonly reported among sociopaths that during violent rages, they don't remember anything. Again, what made this sociopath a little bit different was he was also a narcissistic sociopath. So he had the same feelings of self-loathing, wanting to be in the spotlight, but at the same time, a huge contempt for humanity to where, I don't even like talking about this person to a certain extent because he was just so dangerous to be around. But those are 2 examples. This person was just sick in the head. He didn't care about if he physically harmed someone. He didn't care about if he... if he's the type of person, if he ran over a homeless person, would say, oh, it's good that there are less of them on the streets. Just being around someone like that was horrific. I remember he told me about how jealous he was of me because of many things, but so because he was jealous of me, he, even though I was a really good person to this person and was trying to help them, was hell-bent on trying to destroy me. He admitted this to me. This is the narcissistic sociopath, just one example. Another example of a narcissistic sociopath was one who did have a criminal record and was going to, and by the way, these are, just to kind of give a physical description, these were, clean-cut Caucasian males. One was a musician, he had tattoos and stuff like that. The other one was also a musician, but he looked like a hipster. He looked very clean-cut, and on the surface, you wouldn't know. And again, I want you to think to Jeffrey Dahmer, Hitler, who that was one of the ways that he was able to hurt and harm so many people, is because he looked clean cut. From what people said, he was very charming, very polite, very mild-mannered, and that's how a lot of them come off. They come off mild-mannered. They come off meek. They come off unassuming, not very intimidating. And so people don't tend to think that they will do what they do. So a lot of times with narcissistic sociopaths, people think that they may just be shy, they may just be mild-mannered, they may just be socially awkward or a loner, but it's actually not that at all. That's why I'm saying again, they're very dangerous. If you feel a vibe of danger when you're around them, or something is off, like when you look into their eyes, there's something that's devoid of a soul, or it just seems negative, it's emotionless. These are things to definitely pay attention to, and also what they say, because the narcissistic sociopaths, they give themselves away with what they say. It's almost like they can't help but to expose themselves. But it's important not to ignore these red flags if you see them, if you encounter them. So the other narcissistic sociopath did have a criminal record, but it was a long time ago, and since then he's changed and he's gotten therapy and he's doing all these different things to improve himself. But then took a weapon and he told me that he was going to go and confront someone who had wronged him in order to get revenge. I'm like, wait, whoa, what are you going to do with that weapon? And he was saying, well, he thinks I'm weak, and he thinks he can talk to me anyway, or do this or that, and I'm going to show him. And I'm like, wait, isn't that exactly what you almost went to prison for years ago? What you got the felonies for? And it's like, he cared more about protecting his ego than he did about doing the right thing. So I was able to somewhat talk him away or talk him down from doing that, but he still had it in him that he could potentially snap and go back to that same behavior. I got away from this guy, but narcissistic sociopaths can be a little bit more difficult to distinguish because they will come off like a lone wolf. They will come off like, oh, they're just a little awkward, or they just don't get along well with people. They're just shy, but they're a nice person. They're mild-mannered. They're timid. So it can be easier to dismiss when they're saying red flag statements such as proclaiming violence or wanting to do harm on people for no reason, or like the thing I said earlier about animals. It may be easier to think, no, that person had to have been joking, but they're not joking. They're not joking at all. And if you ask more questions about their history and, oh, have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? You may be very shocked about what you find. If you are involved with someone who is displaying traits of narcissism, do not doubt your gut instincts. Do not doubt your intuition. If you think they might be a sociopath or a psychopath, get away from them as quickly as possible. Seek guidance. Seek help. If you notice that there's a person who loves to start arguments, loves to fight with you, and seems to enjoy it, get rid of that person, especially if you think they might be a narcissist, because if they're a narcissistic sociopath, I don't want any of you to be in danger. I'll talk to you later. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.